Really excited to have Stefan and Daniel joining us today. Stefan is our Director of Product, leading the prioritization of roadmap stream here at Productboard. Known each other for quite a while, and he's a really fantastic product leader, and really excited to have him sharing some of his knowledge and experience on this topic. And then we've got Daniel, who's the Customer Success Manager for the enterprise side at Productboard. Daniel manages some of our larger accounts, particularly in the European market, and is a really amazing and well-experienced customer success professional, again, that will have a ton of value to share today on that side. So with that, I'm going to pass over to them to start sharing their material, and we look forward to hearing what they have to share today.
Thanks, Scott.
And just a quick check, everyone can see the screen, okay?
No problems.
Perfect, awesome. Well, let's dive straight into it. So today, myself and Daniel will be talking about how you can align CS teams and product teams together to ultimately maximize the impact for the customer. And outcome for today's call, like Daniel, if you want to tell everyone, like what do we hope to achieve at the end of this?
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, well, we really want to share some best practices for how CS teams can collaborate with product, and some tools and processes that they can put in place, you know, to ensure great collaboration and to keep the customer top of mind.
Absolutely. And ultimately, this is why we're here today, to talk how we do some of that work at Productboard as well. And before we dive straight into it, so we've got Slido as a little bit of an interactive means of, you know, just engaging with the audience rather than having myself and Daniel speak at you. We want to make this a discussion and also get your input as well. So if you have a phone, feel free to scan the barcode as well. That should bounce you straight into Slido. Or alternatively, if you go to slido.com, you can just punch in the code as well, and you'll be able to go through the content with us as well. So I'll give you kind of another few seconds, as the next slide is actually a little bit of a question to get a good feel for what the audience is today. So we'll give you another couple of seconds and we'll get straight into it. So you're going to have the QR code here as well, but we would love to get a better understanding of, you know, which function are you part of? Like, do we have kind of a good spread of people from PM, customer success as well, others? Okay, so we're starting to see a good spread. So we've got 50% PMs. Okay, this is now starting to get overweighted. We have some CSMs and some from other functions. Actually, if you are from a function outside of like product management or customer success management, please pop it in the chat so we can get a better understanding of like ultimately what the audience is today and potentially tailor the content a little bit for you as well. So we've got 15 responses, 26 folks. Okay, we're slowly bubbling in. So the others, which function do you work in? Don't leave us hanging like this, please. Okay, customer experience operations. Awesome. Strategic partnerships, product owner. Okay, so we've got quite a good spread at the end of the day. Awesome. Well, let's dive straight into it, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we can make that relationship super, super positive and optimized.
All right,
over to you.
Yeah, so at Productboard, we suggest people think about 5 pillars when it comes to assessing product excellence maturity, or how well they're doing product management. And what we've seen here is that in each pillar, there's a number of core competencies that can be used to evaluate where your product team is at today and where you want to go. And inside each of these pillars, strong collaboration between cross-functional teams is so important. It comes up again and again. So if you do well with cross-functional collaboration, you will be able to reach a high level of maturity. Next slide, please, Stefan. Okay, so yeah, and if we take a look at one of these pillars, the process pillar, for example, when thinking about how CS and product teams collaborate, companies that have a low level of maturity for product excellence tend to have a lack of rituals between these teams, and they suffer from communication and collaboration challenges. So if you look at each of these pillars in turn, it would help you kind of pinpoint areas of opportunity to improve product excellence. So for example, if you're a 1 or 2 in the process pillar, then your immediate focus might be on strengthening relationships with other stakeholders outside of product, such as customer success, and also documenting some of your product processes. So customer success teams and other go-to-market teams will find it easier to understand your product org and the type of work that you do. Next slide, Stefan. Okay, so sorry, just Zoom travels here. So yeah, when I joined Productboard, I was like really blown away by the fantastic collaborative relationship that we have between CS and product. It was just simply great to see and made it like such a kind of rewarding experience in my first couple of months here at Productboard. And I really just hadn't experienced that strong relationship elsewhere in some other great companies that I'd worked at. And I had a feeling that what we had going on here at Productboard wasn't really the norm. So I did a bit of studies when I was getting like interested in this topic to learn more. And I got some help from one of my customers, Gainsight, a fantastic PM there who shared some great studies with me on the topic. And I was surprised by some of the findings. And one great TSIA study showed that the majority of companies that were surveyed, around 60% or so, said that they don't have like any formal process for engagement between CS and product. And I wasn't really surprised, but it was great to see the data and the evidence there. And even companies that did have like formal processes, companies who have over 100 million in ARR said that it was really a minority practice. So it wasn't really practiced widely in the organization. So no big surprises there, but that's kind of the reality in many companies today. And probably like a reason why collaboration, might not be too strong between CS and product is like the jobs of a CSM and a PM are really, really hard. And I've learned a lot since I joined Productboard, working with PMs who like are my customers, and also with my PM colleagues, just how demanding the PM job is. So there's not a whole lot of time left over in your day to find time to work on collaboration between CS. So trying to put some tools and processes in place can kind of lighten the load on those two teams and just make it more frictionless to, build strong collaboration between the teams. Right, Stefan, I think it's over to you next.
Yeah, and as Daniel was saying, ultimately we are both kind of stuck in very time-poor jobs where we have to juggle multiple different priorities. On the customer side of things, you have your book of business. You're going to have to keep on top of all of their different demands and all of the different requests. And of course, like liaising with the different teams inside the company as well. And on the product side of things, we balance, of course, sales, customer success, marketing, engineering, design. So in Productboard, we've put a few things that help us manage this better. And let's touch on some of those examples as well. So ultimately, some of the rituals that we've put in place can be kind of split into, I guess, a few which are more informal and then a few which are quite formalized as well. So first example, product buddy, one-to-one. So this is effectively when a PM and a customer success manager, and we've expanded that to sales and kind of our solutions architects as well. When they join, they get paired up with someone on the other side or within the other function. I'm going to touch on this one in a bit. We also do these product calls bi-weekly as well. So these are a great way to fan out the communication from us to the rest of the company, give people ultimately the understanding of like what's coming up over the next 2 weeks, how does that affect your customers, and then product tag team. And we're going to touch on kind of a little, another very important one, which is not on this slide, which is the voice of the customer as well. So starting with each one of those. So what we did around this product buddy, we came to the realization, especially within the product organization, that some of our kind of more junior PMs coming in didn't have a great context around what the customer pain points are. So we talk to customers, but ultimately we just don't have the same number of touch points as our friends in customer success. So what we did is we started with, again, product managers, customer success managers. Because of the success, actually, we expanded it to sales and solution architects. And we started pairing these people up. And the reason there is to, first of all, encourage informal collaboration and context sharing. So some of the great examples are that on the product management side of things, people tend to get a much better download of, first of all, what are the customer pain points, right? Because ultimately, folks in customer success speak to many customers. You have a particular book of business, depending on how it's segmented. You're just going to get a pretty good instinctive view of where people are struggling, where people are succeeding, and passing that knowledge to our product managers made them much more aware of what's happening. On the customer success side of things, so not everyone who has joined maybe has worked in a company where you have a pretty kind of strong product function as we do in Productboard, and we're pretty opinionated about some of the product processes as well. So it's a great way for people, first of all, to just build a better empathy around like how product engineering teams work, but also get a better understanding of what the day-to-day life is. So on the customer success, this helps people understand these are where the issues are. This is where kind of PMs are struggling, and this is how they collaborate with the rest of the organization. And ultimately bringing that into customer conversation as well is just much better for them. And ultimately, again, this led to making sure that people share the customer context, but also focus on the go-to-market side, much better understand the PM role. So when they're having conversations either with prospects or existing customers, they can be much more empathetic about what the challenges are. Then the next one, product call. So we do this every 2 weeks. We used to do this every week, but we started polishing the content a little bit more and moved it to bi-weekly, kind of bi-weekly cadence. What this is all about: PMs coming in and presenting to the customer-facing functions all of the upcoming releases over the next 2 weeks. So before, kind of, we used to just kind of do a laundry list, like these are the features that we're going to be launching. Everyone was super excited, but we collected feedback and we realized that we were actually not giving enough context for people. So we started to change how we communicate these things and use something from kind of the force management methodology, really talk about like before and after scenarios, talk about the customer pain points, talk about what are the positive outcomes for customers as well. So this is now a regular occurrence. It's very well attended from the customer facing teams. I think Daniel can probably vouch for that. We try to make it as helpful for them as possible. And it's just a great way to, first of all, for us, like use our product when it comes to presentation and showcase like what the functionality is, but also help people understand what pain points we're solving as well, rather than just saying we're launching this, there you go.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say there, Stefan, like I've found those calls like so valuable. Like, you know, every 2 weeks you're getting great information about what the product team are working on, you know, what the problem space is that they're trying to solve. And even simple things like you have a great way of sharing the recordings out after each session on Slack. We all have access to the slide deck. Like if I miss a session, I don't miss too many, Stefan, but if I do, I can go back in there and check, like, you know, what are the product team working on? What are they releasing in the next couple of weeks, and have all the context I need going into customer calls.
Exactly. And it's all about helping people understand. So we do a fair bit of Q&A in those sessions as well, again, because it's all about making sure that everyone has the same context. But product call isn't just about us communicating to the rest of the organization. There's also actually another part which we do regularly. And the last iteration of this was a particularly exciting one for me because it was done pretty much mostly within Productboard as well. So this is kind of the voice of the customer. So like we tend to plan kind of at half-year increments with quarterly check-ins, and to keep us honest and also to give us an understanding of whether our roadmap deviates from the customer needs. The customer success team has started driving this exercise, which we call the voice of the customer, where they sample sales, customer success, solution architects, everyone else in the go-to-market teams to just ultimately understand where the biggest pain points are and where the gaps are across different segments. So like whether that's up market, down market, and customer success do this again within PB. So pull it out from a different survey, integrated, it comes into Productboard, gets tagged against features, filtered out. So all of the views are created in super creative views. I love it. But the most important thing is it actually establishes this kind of two-way communication stream where, first of all, we communicate what's coming up on a short-term basis, but also CSM are empowered to come to us and tell us, look, these are the top 10 asks from customers, and this is kind of where we feel like we need to invest more. And the great thing actually is like most of those are pretty well aligned, and I don't think we've had any examples where, you know, we're either not working on some of the top requests or we didn't know about them, but it's just a great way to reaffirm that ultimately we are here to build for our customers, and then customer success giving us an input before we go into either our quarterly or half-year planning as well. And then the next one, which Daniel is going to tell us about, is the product tag team.
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, so like coming back to, you know, keeping the customer top of mind and the product buddy program that Stefan mentioned, that in itself was a great way just to build really strong relationships with different PMs at Productboard for me. So I meet with my product buddy on a regular basis. I think every 3 weeks we meet, we grab coffee, we talk about, you know, what's going on in each other's working lives, and talk about different challenges that my customers are having. And it's an easy way for me to kind of ask, you know, not favors, but like if I have a particular challenge with a customer, it's quite easy for me and natural to kind of ask a PM like, hey, would you mind like kind of jumping on to this call with a customer for like 15 or 20 minutes to go through a particular problem. And PMs, you know, can bring some great context and great perspective and experience to those calls. You know, Productboard is probably a bit unique in that, like, my customers are also PMs. So when I bring a product manager or product leader onto a call, they kind of really understand the customer and that they do that job themselves too. So it's kind of a bit unique in that regard. But Stefan has, you know, also joined customer calls I've had. And, you know, one great thing that like a PM can do is kind of bring that extra perspective about like how they use Productboard themselves, but also how they just do the product management job. And if a customer is facing a particular challenge, they might have like an opinion about how they can kind of go about solving that challenge that I might not have thought about. I might have just thought about like the technology, for example, but Stefan or another PM might be able to suggest, oh, well, maybe there's some other way you could amend your process to kind of tackle the problem from a different angle. So yeah, it's been great kind of ritual that we have in place, and it's quite like widespread throughout Productboard. I've talked to many different CSMs here, and they've all spoke about like great experiences of bringing PMs onto customer calls that have helped kind of dig them out of maybe a difficult situation, or maybe even just inviting like a senior PM to a call has really got like maybe a disengaged customer back to kind of back on side and excited about joining a call just to talk to someone else. And it's a great way of showing customers some kind of extra love too. So yeah, Stefan, I'm going to hand back over to you on the Slido. So we'd love to get anyone's perspective here on the chat about like maybe some similar processes that you might have. So yeah, if you're doing similar things in your company, we'd love to like hear from you. And also if there's something else you're doing that like we haven't mentioned so far, please feel free to just drop it into the chat. So maybe we'll give it like a minute or so to see kind of what's
Absolutely. Let's see the responses kind of coming in. But just to on the previous one as well, for me as a product manager coming in and speaking to customers just to understand, like, first of all, where their frustrations are and where things work as well is very, very valuable. Hence why, like, I always make myself available for those, because probably they are the highest value activity that you can do within any given day. So on to the active poll. Like, let's see. So quite a few people actually have similar processes. It seems like, yeah, about 30% do not, but then toss them please into the chat. Like, we would love to just understand, and I think it's great for everyone else to really know what's working, what's not working. So please feel free to share. This is, it's us telling you about how we do it in Productboard, but we would love to learn from you as well, folks.
Yeah, it looks like we have that 58% of people from that TSIA study I mentioned that do have processes in place for collaborating with CS. Although,
there you go. It's getting closer and closer to that ratio now. It's like 55%, right? So, okay.
Right, well, yeah, we can move on, Stefan, and
absolutely.
Yeah,
can share that later. All righty.
All right. So yeah, we just wanted to talk about a couple of other like tools and processes that we have in place here at Productboard that have really helped build, strong collaboration between CS and product, which includes, allowing both teams to self-service information, and also trying to allow those teams to continue to work in, the favorite tools that they're in each day. So next slide, please. Yeah, so yeah, we've put in place some really simple tools that help, product teams and CS teams self-service information, and it's been really successful. And there's also been a huge kind of area of opportunity that we've identified where CS can, be a better teammate for product teams and help provide, extra customer context that allow like the product managers to do their job more easily. So we're going to dive into some of those now. Yeah, so no surprise here, I suppose, like roadmaps is a big thing for us here at Productboard, but we've, done a fantastic job here of making roadmaps very easily accessible for everyone in CS, and the product team have done a great job at kind of tailoring those roadmaps to be really specific to each audience. So there's like 2 particular roadmaps that I'm a big fan of that are quite easy for me to access, when I need to self-service product information. So one of those, for example, is more of a long-term roadmap where I can see more like kind of what the product strategy is, what are the kind of big ticket items that the product team are working on, and some kind of indicative timeline as to when I can expect those to kind of, be delivered. And it gives me confidence going into customer calls that I can say, well, yeah, I've heard from the product team, or I can see that our product team are investing in this area. And then we have a more granular tactical type roadmap where I can see, okay, what's going to be released in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and all the information is in Productboard that I can go in and access. And but we still have some processes around that. Like it's not perfect, and like the product calls that Stefan mentioned kind of fills those gaps. And if we've any questions, we can bring those to the product call. We've also recently launched a Loom integration with our roadmaps, which I'm really excited about, where our PMs can record a video and pop that on top of the roadmap. So hopefully that's going to give even more context and allow me to just better self-serve the information. And I just wanted to say here that, I can't really overstate how important it is for this building trust between CS and product, that, if I can see what they're working on and largely they're doing what they're saying that they're going to do, and it really builds a lot of trust between CS and product and gives me a lot of confidence going into customer calls that I can say to a customer, yeah, you should expect this in the next couple of weeks, and it just reinforces that trust between the 2 teams. I'm always careful to kind of not be too specific about when to expect something, but yeah, it's just a great way of reaffirming that great relationship between product and CS. And also, we use Slack here a lot as well, and we have, for example, a Slack channel called Releases, where the product team, do great posts there and give great information about what's being released. And it's another way of just kind of building that trust, where you're saying, okay, well, they said 2 weeks ago that we should expect this to be released on a specific date, and then you can see that it has been released. Like you have a busy job, you're not always keeping an update on kind of all the posts, all the public posts, but if you can jump into Slack and see, okay, yeah, we've actually released that, just continues to build that trust. All right, next.
And
sorry,
boom.
Stefan.
No worries, all good.
Yeah, another thing I suppose that has worked really well here at Productboard, and I haven't seen as much elsewhere, is that the product teams make like all their information like really widely available and easily accessible. And you can see all the detail about like what the products team strategy is, what OKRs they are responsible for, product briefs, which give great granular information about different feature ideas that they're working on, what their business case is for each of these features, what kind of metrics they're looking at to track the success. You know, if you self-serve information about a particular feature, it might not always be clear like what exactly it is that they're working on and how that ties to the company's strategy. But having all this extra information, you know, allows CSMs to have like really rich conversations with their customers, and they don't always have to pull in a PM to kind of help them in that regard. It just gives them all the information they need to have that conversation themselves. Yeah, I just also wanted to say, yeah, when product team are like, you know, building all this great content around their strategy, product briefs, that they should really keep in mind like other audiences that can benefit from this information and reuse that and share it out with their customers. So like a quick example of that is, you know, our SVP of products gave a great talk a couple of weeks back at our product maker summit. It was the product keynote. He talked about what our product strategy was. It was like totally aligned with one of the roadmaps I talked about earlier. And it was just like a great 20-minute video content that I could just share with all my customers who were kind of asking questions about like, okay, so like kind of what are you building? What can I expect to see in the next few months? And like, there's no better person than our SVP of product of kind of telling that story and talking about why we're building something. And it was just so easy for me to just reuse that and share it out with customers. So just, yeah, to keep in mind any kind of content that you create is really useful to kind of for other teams to reuse and share with their customers.
Absolutely. And just to kind of do another shout out as well, we did both at the Product Maker Summit, but also at the Product Excellence Summit last year. There's a few videos around how Productboard uses Productboard as well. So if you're curious to see how we get our work done, like Scott just posted the link in the chat, feel free to go ahead and watch it. And the next one ultimately is you have to allow people to work where they want, because everyone is juggling a multitude of different tools, and it's really hard to expect people to actually come in to a specific tool and again, just to surface that information. So for us, it's a hell of a lot easier to think about how do we integrate with other tools in the ecosystem and just make it easier for people to consume that information within their own spot. So like whether it's things like email, Slack, Zendesk, whether it's again taking information from those places or piping information out to them, you have to be seamlessly integrated within the broader ecosystem to make sure that the work is frictionless and you don't have to place unnecessary barriers for people so that they can again get all the benefit without having to bounce back and forth. And to talk another topic, which is customer context. So that's kind of a pretty big opportunity area generally. A lot of times, especially like when I'm kind of doing some discovery or my teams are doing some discovery, it's quite difficult to get the full customer picture, right? Because the information tends to work either in Salesforce or Zendesk or in some other places. And oftentimes you don't want to just reach out to people who you've already spoken to maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 times in the last couple of months, because there's definitely discovery fatigue. And some people, you know, might get a little bit riled up if you just keep contacting them to talk about this topic or that topic or that topic. So we don't want to just keep contacting people out of the dark. So this is where at the moment we lean quite heavily on our customer success partners, and we tend to ask them, hey, I know you're kind of managing this customer. Have you spoken to them before? Have you kind of like organized any discovery sessions? Are they interested in this particular topic that I'm working on as well? Because it's much easier, trust me, to do an interview with people who are passionate about what you're working on rather than someone who is just kind of giving you feedback and isn't super interested in that particular feature or bigger kind of piece of work. But of course, it's super important for also for kind of CSMs to figure out like how can you pipe some of that information and just make it easier for PMs to consume as well. And on this note, actually, we are working on something that we call the customer board, which will help centralize all of this information. So predominantly, we're going to be working to make this easier for customer-facing teams to consume the information in Productboard, but also, of course, this is just going to make it so much easier for PMs to consume the information about customers as well, like whether that's ARR information, like who the CS is, like what kind of state the account is in. All of those custom fields will be available, and you're going to be able to see all of that. And this for us is just, again, within that theme of sharing the context between the two and also making it easier for people to understand where things are at. And of course,
say there, Stefan, sorry, before you jump ahead.
Sorry,
yeah, like that, the whole area of customer context is so important, and it touches you know, some of the other headings we were talking about, like self-serve and information. But yeah, to kind of expand on your points, like from talking to many of the PMs here at Productboard, like I hear like, you know, that they do like waste a lot of time. It's kind of low value work to have to kind of ring around and talk to different CS people to kind of understand what's happening with customers, and is it safe to like reach out to that customer? Is going to cause a fuss if I contact this person? So if you have that information already available in your systems, and you can try to make that available to PMs, it's gonna like make their lives so much easier and make it a lot easier to just continue to collaborate with CS. So I've seen PMs are trying to, you know, work around this today by hacking together different spreadsheets and keeping their own records of customers, like even organizing like a simple beta, for example. They're tracking like you know, different customers, when they've contacted them last, what the customer has said. So if you can kind of leverage some of the tools you already have, like your CS platform, for example, and, you know, pipe that information into the tools where PMs are already working, it's just going to make their lives so much easier. And it's something that we haven't perfected yet, but we see it as a big opportunity area.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Daniel. And then, of course, at the end of the day, don't forget the customer. You know, they sit at the heart of all of this, and it's not, you know, all of the things that we talked about up until this point are actually in service of making sure that the customer is ultimately getting value out of the tool that you're building. Which brings us on to kind of the next point. How do you become more customer centric? And here we talk about customer centricity quite a bit. So I'll leave it to Daniel to share the CSM perspective.
Yeah, so it's slide here is really about, like, you know, why do we want to make CS and product work more closely together? What are the benefits of having that strong collaborative relationship? And it really is all about becoming more customer centric as a company, and becoming more customer centric, you know, can help the company de-risk product investments by actually building products that your customers want and keep your existing customers happy and win more business by bringing in more customers, understanding their needs and prospects' needs. So if you're working closely with CS, working closely with other go-to-market teams like sales, you're going to really have a deep understanding of your customer and build kind of what your customer wants. And, you know, CS talk to customers every single day, and they're an essential component for product teams who want to become more customer centric. And at Productboard, we see, you know, that mature product orgs who are customer centric care about, you know, how much of the customer problem they are solving. They rely heavily on feedback collection processes, which, you know, must include CS as a strong, important stakeholder group. And they use data in the prioritization process, such as the user impact score, which we have in Productboard, you know, which consolidates all the customer feedback together. So without having kind of CS involved in that customer centricity, that customer centric process, you're missing out on an essential kind of, you know, voice of the customer. So yeah, we're going to talk about, you know, a couple of ways that like we've kind of been working to try kind of become more customer centric ourselves, and what we talk about when we talk with our customers. Yeah, so the first one really there is to try, you know, make it effortless for CSMs to share feedback with product. You know, if CSMs find it hard to work with your product org and share feedback, then like only the most diehard or resolute or seasoned CS person is going to regularly share feedback. And you could potentially be missing out on great customer insights to help you become more customer centric. So, you know, we'd recommend that you think about the guidance that product teams could be sharing with CSMs to make it easier for them to share feedback and find product information. Yeah, so one thing personally that I've seen more and more from like speaking with CS people and working with our own customers and CS people within my own customer base is that CS like M's are finding it hard to understand the product org and what all the different teams do and what product areas they're responsible for. It can be a real challenge just to kind of orientate yourself on what the product different teams are doing and what areas they're responsible for. I gave an example here of like the Gryffindor product team, but I've seen so many funny sounding product team names that might make sense to a product team, but it goes way over the head of a CSM. I like one customer, for example, had all the product teams named after like famous mountains, for example, but it didn't tell the CSMs and that customer like what those different product teams were doing. So just kind of thinking about other people that need to understand what products are doing is so important. I know here at Productboard, we've made an effort to try improve that there. We use Notion here, and we've a great Notion page which explains like what all each of the product teams do and the different product areas or problem spaces that they're responsible for. And that's really easy for me to go and check if I have a question about a particular feature or particular problem space. I know who to go to ask questions. And my product buddy can help with that too. That's kind of been the fast track. But if my product buddy wasn't available, I can hop onto Notion and kind of self-serve that information myself. And then the other really important area is just trying to make it as easy as possible to share feedback, for CSMs to share feedback. So if you can give them guidance around what is the correct way to share feedback, what are some of the tools that they can use to share feedback, whether it's sending feedback from email into Productboard or whatever different tool that you're using, just giving them really great guidance on how to share feedback and what information they should include that would be valuable for different PMs is really important. And it just helps the product team, you know, understand the customer better and become more customer centric in the process.
Absolutely. And just to add, like, I think from my perspective as well, like feedback from CSM has been one of the most high quality pieces of feedback as well, because once you kind of shake out the template that you would want feedback to come in, as Daniel was saying, like just make it easy for them to pipe it. And then we within the product org could then work on processing it, linking it to all of the different features. But just by unblocking this, you get a vastly improved understanding of the market and your customers. And then after you get the feedback, you got to close that feedback loop as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like it might seem like a bit of a no-brainer, but if you're not giving the CS team anything back in terms of like they just hear a quick like word that, okay, yeah, we've got your feedback, or like they can see in different like roadmap views or on a product call or something like that, okay, the product team are working on the problem space that my customer is interested in. If you're not like kind of closing that feedback loop, then the CS team are gonna kind of give up, and there's nothing in it for them for like putting in the time to share you know, important customer feedback if they're not getting anything back. So from speaking with certain customers of mine, like some of the sentiment from CS teams is that they see like the product process being as a bit of a like a black hole in some cases, where they share some feedback but then nothing ever comes out again. So you know, I'm just one piece of advice here would be for product teams to like seek as many opportunities as possible to try close the feedback loop, you know, as soon as possible, even if it's just a manual process to begin with. It's super helpful for CSMs to get that kind of feedback. And even a no is useful. If I can hear from a PM, no, that's not an area that we're going to invest in, even a no is useful information that I can take back to my customers. So just tied to that, like some quick suggestions here on the slide is like, you know, think about some rituals that you can put in place to close the feedback loop. You know, if you're using different systems like Productboard, for example, like at mentioning the CSM just to say like, I've got your feedback and we're doing something with it, just closes the feedback loop very quickly. Just to even say like, we've heard you. It might not be like the answer they're looking for right away, but it's something that they're hearing back, which shows, okay, they are listening to me. Following up by email, like is really simple thing that you could do. Strategic roadmap sessions is something we do a lot here at Productboard, particularly with some of our larger customers, where product will come onto a call and present what we're working on, what our strategy is around product, and also to pick out a couple of examples where stuff that we're building is actually tied back to what the customer has asked for. So that's a really strong way of closing that feedback loop, not just with the CSM, but also directly with the customer. Not something we do right here now at Productboard, but customer advisory boards, I've heard from many customers, are really popular, probably back in the like non-COVID days, where you could get all your customers together into like a big room or hall and kind of give them all that direct product feedback. Is like a great way of closing the feedback loop. And I just wanted to also give a call out to one of our customers here. Gainsight are like coming up with really clever ways to try automate that closing of the feedback loop. So they're working on a new integration between Productboard and Gainsight, where they're going to kind of automate that feedback loop. And yeah, I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. And then we come to one of my favorite topics, so being able to actually prioritize real customer needs. So as Daniel was mentioning earlier, we do have the user impact score within Productboard. And again, this is all a function of how much work and effort you put into it. So the more you collaborate with your CS counterparts, the more you're going to be able to get a good volume of feedback, which in turn is going to help you understand whether, again, all of the different things that you have within your hierarchy or just generally are things that customers care about, whether they're important to them or not. And this is quite an important factor in terms of how we do prioritization. But then, of course, it doesn't just stop at this kind of like mechanical filtering and prioritizations. We quite often work with our CSM. So we have a kind of a monthly catch up with our CSM counterparts where we showcase like what's on the roadmap in the short term, and we use it almost like as an extra layer of prioritization. So let's say we're just about to kind of like do the planning for H2. Again, we have the product and CS monthly. We come together and we talk about like, okay, are the things on the roadmap the things that you keep hearing about as well? Or are you hearing about other things that are not captured here? And of course, that allows you to split it, whether this is like a nice to have or an important opportunity or like a real blocker or a must have for some customers as well. And as we spoke a little bit earlier as well, customer success is a very, very important partner when it comes to facilitating like better and more meaningful discovery. Because as I was saying, it's one thing to go to a customer and just talk about a feature. It's another to talk to someone who, first of all, has experienced that pain, is really looking forward to improve this workflow or job to be done, and can give you actionable feedback, whether it's kind of around the prototype or the problem definition. So these are kind of some things that you can do as well to improve how you collaborate together. And with this, we want to pass it back to you to just get a little bit of a pulse check. Like, is there anything that we have missed or you wanted us to kind of talk more about? And after that, we'll jump into a Q&A. So over to you, folks. You know how to scan this. So there's the slider, just scan the barcode and you're good to go.
Yeah, I just want to call out, like, if there's anything we touched on that you just want to talk about a bit more, feel free to like raise your hand. Like if you saw something particularly interested or you would like a bit more detail, we'd be happy to just take a few minutes to go over it more closely.
Absolutely. Okay, we've got someone typing. This is exciting. Churn. Oof, that's a big one. Any particular aspect of churn, like how to prevent it or how to deal with it? No. I think we can maybe start tackling that. So in terms of churn, I think ultimately it's always important to kind of understand what kind of churn it is, right? Like, because in a lot of cases, there are decisions that are being made outside of the team who is using the product, whether like either an exec or someone else has decided that they want to work on a different product. Sometimes it is functionality that you're missing, but when it comes to churn, like the way we work within Productboard is like super closely with our customer success counterparts. And at least for kind of our kind of biggest accounts, what we tend to do is like from the product organization, we have quarterly catch-ups. And we come in, we present the roadmap, we get like a really good download of kind of the customer health. What are they asking for? Like, what do they still need in order to get their job done? So this one, I think it's managing it back and forth between product and CS, because sometimes it is again, a decision that team didn't even have anything to do with it. Sometimes it is kind of like a lack of functionality, but we manage it by, again, working super closely together and collaborating.
Yeah, and I wanted to say as well, like first and foremost, it's really important for like CS teams to capture like churn loss reasons. Like if we lost a customer, to kind of do a retro and capture the reasons. Like Stefan mentioned, like it could be something outside of the product's control, like an exec decision, but sometimes it might just be based on some frustrations with the product or some need that the product wasn't solving. So that VOC process we talked about earlier, some of the kind of needs or feature requests that were bubbling up to the surface, highlighted by the CS team, were really those needs that if they're not addressed, they may introduce extra risk into the book of business, where a customer could churn down the road if they don't get this problem solved, because it's causing a lot of business pain for that specific customer. So that's one area where we tackle. And I know some of our CS leadership here as well at Productboard, do their own analysis on churned customers, and where we capture that is in Salesforce, and they take that information and analysis to the product leadership team and put asks into them to say, hey, look, we're after losing this customer or for this particular reason, is this something that we can solve in the next H2 or whatever, because we don't want this to happen again. So
absolutely.
I see another question there. When CS have a lot of asks, feedback at the same time, how does product manage them all? How does CS manage expectations and feel heard? I'll just briefly mention that, Stefan, before handing it over to you. I think it's fresh in my mind because I was talking to a customer this morning. It can be very challenging as a CS person to talk with a customer and they have a particular ask that you're not sure, is that something we're going to solve, or is that something we're going to do in the next couple of months or even this year. So having a really strong relationship with product allows me to kind of find the answer to that question really quickly. And like if it's like a negative answer, or if it's a no, like one kind of tactical way to present a good story back to the customer is just talk about all the other great work that our product team are doing to show how much investment that they're putting into the product. So again, having that visibility into what the product team are doing and when they're going to deliver it is really helpful to say, okay, well, customer, we're not going to actually fix this, but here's all the other great things that we're doing. And it just helps build up that confidence, with the customer.
Absolutely. And I think with this one, the thing that sucks for being a product manager is probably about, there's multiple cliches around the percentages vary, but a big portion of your role is ultimately saying no and sticking to what the company is building, the most important problems. So when it comes to how we manage them all, again, we have the hierarchy within Productboard. We link all of the different feedback. When it comes to customers, it's important to understand like what the ask and the feedback is about, like whether it's a small thing, like a small kind of feature, or something that is, ultimately not a massive painkiller, but it would make their lives easier. From there, or it's just, like a bigger theme or a bigger bucket of feedback where they're kind of wanting a new job to be done at it or a new workflow at it. Based on that, then if it's a smaller thing, you have to understand like where does it land with the roadmap, because the reality with some of those is that if they're aligned with our strategy and like where we want to get to, the answer isn't no, never. It's predominantly no, not right now, because there are particular things that we're focusing on. If it's a bigger job to be done, of course, then there is the other question of, is this something that we want to play into? Because ultimately some kind of workflows or some like jobs to be done potentially could be slippery slopes from a product point of view, right? Like where you can dilute a little bit your value proposition as a product if you just end up building everything and anything. So it is a balancing act. For the smaller asks, we tend to be quite direct and we say like, look, if it's something that we know of, we're not looking at it now, but we think it's roughly going to land with it this quarter or this half a year. If it's a bigger thing, then we have to have a bigger conversation, like whether it aligns with our strategy or not. And to be honest, like in most of the cases, I think within the product team, we can actually find some workarounds as well, because either our CSMs or solutions architects or ourselves, like we're all clever people and we all have good enough context about this. So in some cases, it might actually be solved through APIs, or it might be solved through like some of our partners as well. So there's multiple different ways to tackle it from a product point of view. And then company OKRs versus Csd Insights. I think this one is super interesting because ultimately company OKRs should be goals and outcomes of where you want to get to as a company. But then the solutions and how you get to those goals is driven entirely by the level of autonomy you have within your organization. So it is going to be dependent on how much autonomy you give your teams to work within those envelopes. So I don't think there is an inherent kind of like a dichotomy between those two things when it's one or the other. Ultimately, your OKR should be informed by customer success insights, because otherwise it's just, the reality is like not all of us are Steve Jobs, and that there's very few people who have like this inherent intrinsic insight into the customer and can just like power through walls, mountains, any kind of geographical feature to ship incredible products. So my kind of like perspective is that ultimately OKRs should be informed by those insights, because otherwise who the hell are you building those OKRs for? Just doesn't make sense.
Awesome. Thanks for taking the time, Daniel and Stefan, for sharing your wisdom and knowledge today. Really appreciate it. I think a lot of people found this helpful. I know we would have loved to have spent a little bit more time, maybe getting more questions, more discussion and dialogue, but encourage people to come and join us in our community and share any feedback that you have post-session or any questions that you have. Daniel and Stefan are definitely available on that side to jump in and chime in on that side. So just a few things to kind of wrap things up. I did share a link to our post-event survey. We'd love to hear your feedback on this. We're always looking to improve our, and I know our guest speakers also love to hear your thoughts and feedback as well. So feel free to share that. We do give away little prizes as well for people who do fill out the survey. We do a regular ongoing draw, and we'd love to hear what you have to share on that side. We again invite you to continue the conversation within our community. You can easily create, share a new post, add additional comments or questions post-event if you need them. A few things upcoming. We have next week our Building Products That Matter Together mini conference that happens on May 31st, June 1st, and June 2nd. These are 12 fantastic speakers over 3 days. There are 4 half-hour sessions per day. We've got about 1,300 people so far signed up to attend this event. So really excited to be featuring some of the great speakers and commentary on this. If you want to learn about how to build great products, what collaboration between good product teams and their other counterparts looks like, this should be a good set of sessions from you on that end. We also have Japna Sathi from our product board team as well, speaking this month on product-led growth. So if you're trying to do a PLG motion or interested in how we tackle that topic, Japna will have a wonderful ton of stuff to share on that side with us. Christian Krumlish is joining us on June 16th. Christian's the author of a fantastic book on UX and product management. If you're looking either to make the transition or are interested in how to better collaborate between those two teams, he is your perfect speaker on this topic. And then lastly, rounding up the month, being mindful of mental health and the importance of mental health and the priority of this across teams and product organizations. We'll be having Nicholas Gementa speaking on that topic on June 30th. Lots of other ways to get involved in our community as well, whether it be joining our monthly roundtables, whether it be joining our Meet a Maker program where you get a chance to match up with other people in our community, or whether you want to put your hand up and speak and share some of your knowledge, contributions. We're not the only ones that want to share here. We'd love to hear what you maybe want to contribute on that side. Feel free to let us know, and we'd be happy to have you involved. Again, thank you very much for joining us. We really look forward to seeing you back at our other weekly events. And thank you again, Stefan and Daniel, for all your help and participation.
Thank you, folks.
All right,
Thanks,
no problem.
It's a pleasure.
Take care.